Hey, I'm Ryan David, and the following video is the fourth and final clip of a four-part series that I did on Sigmund Freud and personality theory. It's really a couple clips of a lecture that I gave to my Introduction to Psychology course. Maybe you've already watched the previous three clips on other aspects of personality theory and what Freud contributed to personality theory and psychology. This is the last and final clip that I'm uploading in terms of as far as Freud and what he contributed. And this specific clip is about defense mechanisms. Very interesting aspect of Freud and what he contributed to psychology and aspects of the unconscious part of our mind and how we use these defense mechanisms. Very interesting stuff, so I hope you enjoy looking at these videos with Sigmund Freud, and we're looking at to break down the aspects of what he contributed to psychology. This one specifically, defense mechanisms. Be sure to watch it, because what I talk about specifically is why you should deal with your problems. They don't go anywhere, and Freud talks about defense mechanisms as a way we use to kind of alleviate anxiety and distress in our lives, but it never goes away, as you'll see in this video. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you like it. I hope you watch the previous three videos, the previous three clips that I did on this same lecture. I hope you look forward to more, and I'll look forward to uploading more. If you are impressed or you do like these videos and you look forward to more, definitely subscribe. Leave me some comments down below in the comment section about what your thoughts are on the different videos, and I look forward to your feedback, and I hope you enjoy. Defense mechanisms, as I mentioned a second ago, they are the way in which we alleviate anxiety. The anxiety that takes place with that tumultuous dynamic in the relationship between those structures of the personality. Defense mechanisms are tactics the ego uses to reduce anxiety by unconsciously distorting reality. That's key. So sometimes it's such a challenge or a struggle with the id on one side and the superego on the other one, and to deal with reality is such a struggle. What we'll do oftentimes psychologically is we'll distort reality so it looks differently, or we think about it differently, so as to one of these can chill out. So we'll make reality different or unrealistic or different than it really is, so that one of these will chill out and there won't be such a conflict. Distort reality, and you'll see defense mechanisms are very interesting. When you start to read about them and you look at different types and different ones that there are, you start to see even not only some of the behavior of other people in your lives, but some of your own behavior too. We do these things to alleviate anxiety. We distort reality sometimes. It's cognitive biases and defense mechanisms that can take place. And I'll read a few of them and give you a couple of examples so you can just see how these really work in everyday life. Distort reality. The most primitive defense mechanism is denial. It's the most primitive, okay? Well, before I do that, I'm going to just speak on defense mechanisms and I'll put the examples up on the board. Now understand what it says here about defense mechanisms. As I said, they reduce anxiety by doing what? Unconsciously distorting reality, as the book says. And they're not all bad. They're not necessarily unhealthy. So the example that I give you of when it might not be a bad idea, or not a bad idea, but might not be a bad thing for you to distort reality would be, say an individual who family member passed away and died, and mom or dad or somebody in the family, and that individual is affected by that loss. But somebody's got to put together the funeral arrangements. Somebody's got to take care of business. Somebody's got to hold everything down and keep the ship together, right? Well, if that individual was so focused and caught up in the reality of the fact that they just lost this individual, they would be grieving so much so that they wouldn't really be able to function like that. Another way to put it is, how is it that that individual at the funeral or in charge of these arrangements, how is it that they can function the way that they are when everybody else is just torn up? Well, there's a little bit of denial going on. There's not necessarily denial. There's a little bit of a defense mechanism going on there, possibly denial, for them to function and operate. And this happens with you. I mean, how often have you been through something that was just crappy, just really horrible or rough, and you dealt with it for a minute, but then you picked yourself up and you got through the rest of your day or the rest of your life not thinking about that thing? Well, how did you not think about it? It was terrible. Well, a defense mechanism came into play. So let's just bury that for a second and put that, under the rug for a minute, or let's pack that up and not focus on that so we can get through our lives. Well, that packing it up and not focusing on it, that's a defense mechanism so you can operate. Does that make sense? That's a defense mechanism. So you're distorting reality, lessening it, making it not as big of a deal, changing it to something else, moving it over here. You're changing the way that you're really thinking about things constantly so that you can operate. So defense mechanisms are not necessarily unhealthy. I would say if they're temporary. Defense mechanisms are not a healthy solution to problems. So a solution to your grief about losing your mom or your dad would not be a defense mechanism. A solution would be to grieve and to go, to process that information and to grieve the loss. A defense mechanism may be necessary temporarily for you to function temporarily, but that's not ultimately the best case scenario, or I should say, the best viable solution for you to use to get over the loss of your mom or your dad. Just bury it. No. Because remember, when you bury something in your mind, it's still in your mind. You understand?
So it's like a Band-Aid, basically.
Correct. Right? You don't want to put a Band-Aid on a broken arm. It's not going to really work out for you. You might look and seem and feel like it right away. Band-Aid broken arm is a bad example of, but you get the point. Not a good solution. So they're not necessarily unhealthy as short-term strategies or tactics to deal with things. We need them to use them. I mean, if you get into a car accident and you keep reliving the accident, you're kind of stuck and you're paralyzed, you're not going to be able to function. But if somehow you can, put it outside of your conscious mind, maybe through the use of a defense mechanism, then you'll be able to operate. Okay? That's why defense mechanisms aren't necessarily unhealthy. However, if you don't ever deal with or address the thoughts or whatever it is that you're trying to bury or repress, and we'll talk about repression in a second, that's not a good look. And way too many people try to do that. Bury their problems. They don't go away. They just get buried. And we talked about Freud. What can happen? Well, you end up in a wheelchair and don't know why. That's an extreme case. But you bury your problems and one day you don't have the use of a limb and you're like, why can't I use this arm? Everything's fine in my life. Everything's perfect. Oh, except for that thing that you buried when you were 10 years old and you haven't thought about it for 25 years. Maybe that's bothering you a little bit. You don't realize it. Now it's coming out in your arm and you don't realize it. Or it manifests in some other, disability or ailment. So a lot of people who walk around and are anxious, a lot of students I deal with, even after class, let alone throughout my career as a coach and a counselor, people are anxious and they don't know why they're anxious. There's nothing wrong. I don't know what's bothering me. I don't know why I'm anxious. There's nothing wrong. Well, there's nothing wrong right now. But if we go back 2 years, or 5, or 2 months, something happened then? I don't know. Perfect example. This is how amazing the universe is and how amazing life is. Today's Thursday, right? Happy Friday, by the way. Today's Thursday. On Tuesday, my night class. True story. Girl comes to me after class. She says to me, how did she word it? Basically she said, I'm a wreck. I don't know what's going on with me lately. I'm having a hard time sleeping. I can't really concentrate, and I don't really know what it is. And she would, she kind of elaborated on how she was struggling and really did. And the gist of it was, she didn't know why. She didn't know why she was. Then she says, my mom died 2 months ago, and ever since then, I'm like, well, there we go. Well, now we're on to something. And I said, how long have you been struggling, with this kind of being a wreck, whatever? Probably about 2 months. Well, you don't got to be a rocket scientist to do that math, do you? She never grieved properly. She hasn't really dealt with it. She's in the military. She's probably got soldier mentality. Just kind of bury it, deal with it, move on. Doesn't work that way. Your mind doesn't care. I said, listen, you're a normal cat. You're a normal person. You just haven't dealt with a normal situation, loss of your parent, your mom. You haven't dealt with it appropriately. You're healthy. And, you haven't dealt with it the right way, so now it's manifesting and it's coming out in anxiety or, lack of sleep, whatever it is. It doesn't go away. So that's a perfect example of how we don't use this as a solution. And if you don't deal with that's why I always encourage you, deal with reality. Deal with your problems or challenges. Deal with them. Put them in the right place. Put them in a box that you know they're in. Because if you just sweep them under the rug or put them in the closet, now they're in the closet, but you don't know where they are. And they're banging on the walls and banging on the door, and they're messing stuff up and knocking over other boxes, and but it's in the closet. I'm not really thinking about it because it's over there. No, get it, take it, look at it, label it, put it in a box, put the box there, so at least now you know where it is. And that's a visual for you, but that's one way to deal with them. That's why I always tell you, look, if you have something that's painful, something that's problematic, make sure you address it. Maybe not right then, but get back to it. Address it, focus on it, deal with it. Oh, but it's too painful, it's too gentle. Okay, bury it then. Let's see how that works out for you. You have an option, but just to show you what can take place if you do that. And I agree. Some things in life are very painful, and we don't want to relive them per se. But you have to weigh it out. Is the cost of how it's going to affect you in your everyday life and manifest into other areas, into your relationships, into your behavior, into your instincts, into your impulses. It's going to come out. It's going to seep out. Remember, it's not just because you're not aware of it up there consciously, doesn't mean it's not in there somewhere. So you have to weigh it out. Is it going to be, is the pain going to be too much to bear and I'll just kind of deal with whatever the problems are that are manifesting in my everyday life? Or is it worth going back and addressing this and getting some closure with this thing? You can't undo the past, but you can get closure. A little bit of a tangent there, but I want to make sure I made that point. Defense mechanisms. A couple of them in particular. Again, these are interesting. You can Google these, you can look these up, you can read them in the book. Very interesting. Denial, though. What is denial? Well, we know what denial is. Denial, not the river in Egypt. Denial. Feel free to use that joke whenever you're talking about denial. So denial, what is denial? Well, it's denying what's reality. It's denying what's right in front of you. Fake news. Essence of denial, right? It's news and you call it fake news, well, you're in denial. If it's absolutely news and it's factual and it's right in front of you and you call it fake news, well, that's a form of denial. And there are many forms. But the point is, if you're denying reality, or denying facts, or denying what's right in front of you, so that you don't have to deal with it or accept it, that's denial. And that's a defense mechanism. And for some people, that's what they do. No, your husband's cheating on you. No, he's not. No, he's not. Here's some pictures. Oh, yeah, no, they were just, let me show you a video. Yeah, no, they were just friends. They were just, denial. Denial. Too painful to accept the facts, so I'll distort reality and call it something that it's not. Denial. A lot easier for some people, but not the healthiest. Understand denial. We know what denial is. Disbelief of present reality. Displacement. I'll give you an example of displacement, where you shift your feelings, unpleasant feelings, you shift them to a new object. So the example I give you is you're at work or you're on your job and you have an issue at work where your boss kind of just lays into you and goes off and just chaps you and just, really just tears into you. You get upset, you're frustrated, you get angry maybe, depressed, whatever it is. You feel some type of way because of your boss or the interaction you have with your boss. But rather than expressing that and letting that out towards your boss, you bury it. And you keep it to yourself and you take it on the chin and you go home. And you think you buried it, but when you get home, you go off and snap and pop off at your spouse. And you're basically unloading now on your spouse. And your spouse is like, they're thinking, what's wrong with you? What's going on with whatever? But, they don't snap back at you. They just take it from you. And they're like, gee, man, they just unloaded on me. And now your spouse has that and they carry it around. Maybe they go around the corner and the kids are playing and they made a small mess and they just go off on the kids and they just dump it all on the kids and they're angry at the kids and the kids are like, hey, what's wrong with mom? And jeez, and now the kids got this baggage, right? And they got it all. And what do the kids do? The kids walk around the corner and the dogs come in and they shove the dog. The dog says, what's the problem? The dog goes out back and sees a cat. Oh, let me get the cat. You see what happens here? Displacement. Okay, this is an extreme example, but displacement. She almost choked on her Starbucks. Is that Starbucks or McDonald's? McDonald's has turned into Starbucks. You seen those lately, man? They're remodeling all. They're trying to be Starbucks. That's displacement, where you take something out on somebody else, or something happens. I should say something happens with you emotionally, and you take those feelings and you unload them onto someone else. And this can happen oftentimes in your relationships. Or sometimes somebody pops off or goes off about something and they say it's about something, but it's really not. Like they get home and you left the dish by the sink and they go off on you about the dish and you're like, yo, what's up with that? And it ain't about the dish. It's about them unloading and displacing whatever they dealt with earlier that day. They don't realize it. They're not thinking, man, I'm going to go home and I'm just going to unload on my wife right now tonight. I'm just going to go off on her right now. It's not what they're thinking about. It's just that's how it plays out. Displacement. Sublimation. So the example I use for sublimation is where you take what it says, the vile, and you turn it to valuable. So you take something that's really unacceptable in everyday life, and the example I used was maybe say a UFC fighter. So maybe an individual that likes to fight or has a lot of aggression. That's really vile and unacceptable because it can cause pain and violence and damage to other people. Well, that individual, and I think Freud would have a field day with something like UFC fighters, in this sense, I would guess, they're taking that energy or that aggression, if you will, they're channeling it into becoming a championship fighter that fights within the rules, within the boundaries, within the game. So you take something that's unacceptable and you transform it into something that's more acceptable. There are other examples there as well. There was one with a nun, but I can't really remember what it was. I think it was like somebody who went from like a prostitute to a nun, which is pretty extreme examples, but that's the point. So you can look up sublimation. I might have that wrong. I might have that confused with a different defense mechanism. Projection. This is a good one as well. Everybody in here is guilty of this one, but some of you guys deal with this more often than others, and oftentimes in relationships. This is when you go bring up something to somebody and kind of accuse them or show them that they've done something, and the first thing they do is blame you of the thing that they did. Like, yeah, but you do that, or no, you do that. I don't do that, you do that. And then you're confused because you know for a fact that they do it, and you're just trying to point out that they do it, and their answer to you is, no, you do that. And you're like, well, what's going on here? They're projecting their own faults onto you as a defense mechanism so that they don't have to deal with their faults. They'll rather make you guilty or responsible of it. Projection. Happens all the time. Quick, too. Some people, this is really how they roll. They attribute their own faults to others. And they might even beat you to it. They might even beat you to it. You don't even have to accuse them of it. So, somebody's unfaithful. They cheat in a relationship. Oftentimes, they're the ones that go and accuse their partner of cheating or suspecting them of cheating. Why? Well, they're projecting what they're doing onto their partner. Not intentionally, or I should say not consciously, but that's what's happening there. Oftentimes. So you can see the conflict that takes place here and how projection works, where you take what you're doing, what you're guilty of, your own faults, and projecting them onto somebody else. You're really distorting reality so it's easier to deal with. I hope you guys are understanding that theme. And then the last one is repression. Repression is the most powerful and pervasive defense mechanism. Okay? And repression probably is at the core of all of these to a certain extent. The book says, repression pushes unacceptable id impulses back into the unconscious mind. Repression is the foundation for all of the psychological defense mechanisms whose goal is to repress threatening impulses, that is, to push them out of awareness. Freud said, for example, our early childhood experiences, many of which he believed were sexually laden, we'll talk about that in just a second here, are too threatening for us to deal with consciously, so we reduce the anxiety in childhood conflict through repression.